Neder, prohibiting one who makes a neder, prohibiting the Yelodim, is permitted to benefit from those to be born. If the Noladim, he is forbidden to benefit from those already born. Now, Meir permits benefit even from those already born. The comment, however, say that this person referred only to that which bears offspring. The one who makes a neder prohibiting those who rest on Shabbos is forbidden to benefit from Jews and forbidden to benefit from Kuthians. If those who eat garlic, he is forbidden to benefit from Jews and forbidden to benefit from Kuthians. If the pilgrims to Yerushalayim is forbidden, he is forbidden to benefit from Jews, but permitted to benefit from Kuthians. If one says, Konam, what I benefit from the descendants of Noach, he is permitted to benefit from Jews, but is forbidden to benefit from Gentiles. Konam, what I benefit from the progeny of Abraham, he is forbidden to benefit from Jews, but he is permitted to benefit from Gentiles. Konam, what I benefit from Jews, he must buy for more and sell for less. Konam, what Jews benefit from me, he must buy for less and sell for more if they listen to him. Konam, what I benefit from them, and they from me, he may benefit Gentiles. If one says, Konam, what I benefit from the uncircumcised, he is permitted to benefit from uncircumcised Jews, but forbidden to benefit from circumcised Gentiles. Konam, what I benefit from the circumcised, he is forbidden to benefit from the uncircumcised Jews, but is permitted to benefit from circumcised Gentiles, for the term Orla is used only as a general name for Gentiles. As it is said, for all the nations are uncircumcised, and the whole house of Israel are uncircumcised in the heart. And it says, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be, and it says, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised be jubilant. The Elazar ben Azariah says, the testicle is the foreskin, for it is the wicked, for with it is the wicked are disparaged. And as it is said, for all the nations are uncircumcised. Verse Mishael says, great is circumcision, for concerning it 13 covenants were made. And Rabbi Yossi says, great is circumcision, which overrides the strict Shabbos. Rabbi Shua ben Korka says, great is circumcision, for concerning it even Moshe, the righteous one, was not spared for 1 hour. Rabbi Nechemiah says, great is circumcision, which overrides the Gayim. Rebbe says, great is circumcision, for despite all the precepts which our forefathers Abraham fulfilled, he was not called complete until he circumcised himself. Pasuk says, walk before me and be perfect. Another thing, great is circumcision, for if not for it, the Holy One, blessed is he, would not have created his world, as it says, so says Hashem, if not for my covenant day and night, the laws of heaven and earth I would not have put in place. Okay.
All right, Perek Daled. The start of the Mishnah should be familiar to you from Megillah. Ein bein hamuda hana mechavero lemuda haminu machal ila drisas haregel v'kelim she'ein osin v'hen ochel nefesh. So there's no difference, says the Mishnah, between somebody who is prohibited from benefiting from his friend, or from somebody who's prohibited from getting food from him. Okay, the only difference is things that are basically non-food related, like drisat haregel, the permission to walk through a person's property. So if you're prohibited from benefit, you can't walk through his property. If you're only prohibited from food, then you can walk through his property. And also kalim. So if you want to borrow the guy's bicycle, that's okay, because that's not a food related thing. But if you want to, but then it will see here in the Mishnah, hamuda machal mechavero, if he is prohibited from enjoying food from his friend, lo yashileno nafa, he's not allowed to lend him a sifter, kvara, sieve. Rechaim is a hand mill, tanur is an oven, things that are
Food related,
involved in making food. But he can lend him a coat, a tabat, a ring with talis, or a talis, right? And nizamim rings, and anything that is not involved with making food. However, if the custom is that people don't just lend things to each other, some places they have a custom that you pay a smaller rental fee every time you borrow something from a neighbor, and in that case you would not be allowed to borrow it without money, because then that money could be used to buy food. Okay. If somebody is prohibited benefits from his friend, Shokel is shiklo. So let's say so Shimon got broges with Reuven, and Shimon said, you asked I asked myself from any benefit from you. So Reuven is now also bound by this neder. He's not allowed to give any benefit to Shimon. Okay, what can he do? Shokel is shiklo. He can, however, contribute his shekel to the temple for him, or for Eres Chovo, and in the same category, he is allowed to settle Shimon's debts. Why? Because this is and he's also allowed to return his lost objects. So in terms of the shekel and the debts, he's doing a mitzvah on the other person's behalf for the shekel. For the debts, all he's doing is he's proverbially chasing away the lion from his house, because he's getting the creditors off his back, but he's not actually giving him. It's a remarkable thing that paying off somebody's debt is not considered a hana. It's not considered asur to a person, and we'll see many more cases where somebody who's prohibited to give hana is nonetheless wants to be the adult in the room and help his friend out in a tough spot. So we see that paying off a debt is permitted. And he's allowed to do hashavas aveda for the guy. That's again, you're just restoring what's really his. That's a mitzvah, and he can't, and it's not considered a hana. However, there are some places where the minhag was to give the person a tip for giving back an aveda. So if he gives back if he refuses payment for this for returning the aveda, then that's a hana to Shimon, because Shimon's now got the money that he should have had to pay. So what does he have to do? He pull hana lehektesh. He has to give that money that he saved to hektesh. Okay, but Torim is trumaso. Furthermore, Reuven is also allowed to separate truma from his own produce in order to exempt Shimon's produce. As long as Shimon knows about it, because if you don't tell somebody that you're taking truma and maaseh from his produce, then he still thinks it's tevel.
Right.
And there can come out another kula from this, because what does he do? Is he thinks that this is tevel produce, so he takes it and he decides that he's going to take truma from this, including some other produce that was on the side. And if taking from the pater on the chayev does not work, so he's got to inform him that he's doing it. Umakriba loves kine zavin, and he is allowed to contribute the korbanot that Shimon is liable to, right? Kine zavin, kine zavos, kine yoldos, chatas, v'ashamos. These are all obligatory offerings that a person has to bring under certain circumstances, as opposed to shlamim or a toda or something like that, which is a voluntary offering or an ola. The voluntary offerings that he gives him, if he gives him that, then that's a hana. He's giving him a gift there, but this is kind of like paying a debt.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Umelamdo midrash halachas v'agadas. He is also allowed to teach him the midrash. Midrash being so he's allowed to teach him midrash from verses in the Torah like Mechilta, Sifra, Sifri, halachas and agadas. In other words, you can teach him for free all of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And that's not considered a hana that's asur to Shimon, because a person is actually not allowed to take pay for teaching Torah. Okay, so all he's doing is keeping a mitzvah. He's keeping a mitzvah of teaching Torah, and the general rule is that a person, it's a contemporary thing that we had to come up with all sorts of heterim to allow teachers to take a salary, because this is something that should be the nachla of all of Israel. You shouldn't be allowed to charge for it. Nonetheless, that's considered not covered by the vow. Aval melamed who is bana. Wait. Aval lo yelamedenu mikra, but he's not allowed to teach him the tamim of the mikra. In other words, the tune to which you learn the Torah. Now that's not considered the ikar part of the Torah, and he is entitled to charge for that. And if he teaches him for free, then that's a hana that he's aser from. Okay. Aber melamed who is banav es benosav mikra. Did you see a little thing that just slipped in there? I just realized. He can teach. We're talking about trop. We're teaching about learning from the Torah.
Right.
He's allowed to teach his son and his daughter.
The trop.
The trop.
I was thinking about that when I
That's how we see in this Mishnah that it's actually shaykh for girls to learn the trop of the mikra.
It doesn't say anything about teaching. I'm looking here in the notes, but it doesn't say anything about teaching the girls. So it just says that you can do that.
That's an interesting. I kind of slipped it in there. Okay. So why is this? Why is he allowed to teach the children? Because Shimon's got a chiyuv to teach his children,
right?
And Reuben's just coming in and performing the mitzvah on his behalf. So
yeah, I'm sorry. It says here many versions of this Mishnah omit the words "and his daughters," presumably reflecting the question of whether it's permissible to teach one's daughter Torah. The Gedusha Harim in Yoredeya, however, cites this Mishnah as the source for the Rambam's ruling in Hilchos Talmud Torah, which permits teaching the written law, that is, scripture to girls.
Interesting. I heard actually on the subject, going a bit of a tangent here, but it's worth it. From Rav Rabanowitz, he held exactly the opposite. That it's asur to teach Torah shebichtav to girls, you have to teach them Torah shebal peh. Why? Because if you read Torah shebichtav without Torah shebal peh, you can come to completely wrong conclusions about, ayin tachas ayin, for example.
Right.
If you don't have Torah shebal peh on that, you're going to think, if somebody puts your eye out, then you have the right to take their eye out. It's like, no, chas v'shalom. I mean, there's so many things in the Torah shebichtav that you just cannot take literally. It's dangerous to take literally. When you talk about the Yad Hashem, right? What you're saying that God has a body? You can come to apikosis if you. So interesting. Anyway, v'zanis ishto v'espanav apopishu chayv b'mezonoseihem. And furthermore, if Shimon is hard up, then Reuben's allowed to feed his wife and his children, even though Shimon is the one who's chayav in that, and therefore he's got a saving from it. But it's kind of, again, in the category of a debt. It's the chiyuv that he's got to pay to his wife and children. However, his animals he cannot feed. Why? Because this is a direct hana to Shimon's property, whereas his wife and children are not his property. They're separate individuals. But if you feed, if Reuven feeds Shimon's animal, then that's a direct hana to Shimon. Bein tamea, bein tahora, says the Tanna Kama, because that's going to be distinct from Rabbi Eliezer. Okay? Because Rabbi Eliezer distinguishes. He says zan es hatamea, but eno zan es tahora. He says now he's allowed to feed the tama animal. So if he's got a horse, he's allowed to feed the horse, but eno zan es tahora, but he can't feed the cow.
Right.
So everyone looks at Rabbi Eliezer and says, "Amrullah ma bein tamea letahora." Why are you making a distinction? Amar lahen she'atahora nafsha l'shamayim gufa shelo, because a tahor animal, its neshama, its nefesh, at least belongs to Shamayim. It'll go back to, when the animal dies, then that goes back. But the guf is his. He can shecht it and he can eat it. So if you fed it, then it's a fatter animal because you fed it, and that's gone to, and that's not going to be a hana. But it's a meya nafsha v'gufa l'shamayim. In both cases, he can't eat the horse if it dies. So it's not considered a hana. Amrulo, afatzmeya nafsha l'shamayim. The same thing goes for the tameya, because the guf still belongs to him. Even if so, what's he going to do with the dead horse? He can sell the meat to non-Jews or feed it to his dogs. So there's a hana. Interesting question is like, why did they have to come onto that? Why not just say, you're feeding this horse so that it's strong enough to carry him, to do work for him? So why that would have been a much simpler answer, I would have thought. So why didn't we mention that as a refutation to Rabbi Eliezer? I don't know. It's not dealt with in here. Does Artsroll touch on that question by any chance?
I don't see. It just says that if the animal's fattened, they can fetch a higher price. No, I don't. It's just about the kosher animal. And when the kosher animal's soul goes to heaven, that is when the animal is slaughtered, its body goes to the owner. He eats it. Therefore, the owner is interested in the fattening of the animal. However, when the non-kosher animal dies, the owner cannot eat it. Therefore, since he has no enjoyment from the body, he has no interest in fattening it. No, it doesn't help, right?
No, so they don't ask my question.
No.
Okay.
All right.
Stay there. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to verse Yud Gimel Ches.
Yud Gimel Ches. If one produced a note of indebtedness against another, and the latter produced a deed that he sold him the field, Adman says he can say, if I were indebted to you, you should have collected yours when you sold me the field. The comment, however, say this one was clever in that he sold him the land since he can take it for a security. Right, okay. If two people produce notes of indebtedness against each other, Adman says, if I owed you money, how do you borrow from me? The comment say, however, this one collects his note of indebtedness and this one collects his note of indebtedness. There are three lands as far as marriage is concerned: Judea, the other side of the Jordan, and Galil. They cannot remove from town to town to move from city to city. In the same land, however, they remove from town to town or from city to city, but not from a town to a city or from a city to a town. And they may remove it from a bad dwelling to a good dwelling, but not from a good dwelling to a bad dwelling. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, not even from a bad dwelling to a good dwelling, for the good dwelling puts to the proof. Okay, all right, so here. And where are we going after this? When we finish
from Chassidus, then we go back into Nedarim.
Back to Nedarim, okay. All right. Rosh Hashanah.
Chassidus first. We've got Beis Ches.
Oh, you're right. I forgot that we had that. Beis Ches. Rabbi Yehuda says, we do not raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness. And Rabbi Elazar said, when there are contesters, and when there are no contesters, we raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness. Excuse me. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Sagan, raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness. A woman who was imprisoned by Gentiles is because of money is permitted to her husband. But if it was for the purpose of taking her life, she's prohibited to her husband. A city that was conquered by a besieging troop, all Kohanim's wives found therein are unfit. But if they have witnesses, even a slave, even a maidservant, they are believed. A person who is not about himself, a person is not believed about himself, says Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakatsav. By this temple, her hand did not move out of my hand from the time the Gentiles entered Jerusalem until they left. They said to him, a person cannot testify for himself. And in these cases, people are believed to testify when they are of age about what they saw when they were minors. A person is believed to say, this is my father's handwriting, and this is my teacher's handwriting, and this is my brother's handwriting. I remembered so-and-so that she went out with a veil and with her hair untied, and that so-and-so went out of school to immerse himself in order to eat truma, and that he shared with us on the threshing floor. And this place be a base press, base of Paris. Like I'm saying this wrong.
Base of press, yeah.
Base of press. I'm sorry, I'm looking. Base of press. And until here, we used to go on the Sabbath. But a person is not believed to say so and so had a right of way in this place. So and so had a stopping spot and a eulogizing spot in this place. Okay.
Shoshana.
If a person blows a shofar into a pit or into a cistern or into a cask, if one heard the sound of the shofar, he has fulfilled his obligation. But if he heard the sound of an echo, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Similarly, if one were passing behind a synagogue, or if his house was close to a synagogue, and he heard the sound of the shofar or the sound of the reading of the Megillah, if he concentrated, he has fulfilled his obligation. If not, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Even though both he and someone else listened, this one concentrated, but the other one did not concentrate. And it came to pass when Moshe raised his hand that Israel prevailed. Was it Moshe's hands that won the battle or lost the battle? Rather, the Torah teaches you, as long as Israel looks heavenward and subjected their heart to their Father in heaven, they would prevail. But when they did not, they would fall. In a similar manner, you learn, make a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that whoever is bitten will look at it and live. Was it the serpent that killed or the serpent that gave life? Rather, when Israel looked heavenward and subjected their heart to their Father in heaven, they were healed, but when they did not, they perished. A deaf person, an imbecile, and a minor cannot discharge the obligation of the many, and this is the general rule. Whoever is not obligated himself in a manner cannot discharge the obligation of the many.
Okay, one more.
When Rosh Hashanah festival fell on the Sabbath, they would blow the shofar in the temple, but not in the province. After the temple was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that they blow the shofar in every place where there is a bested. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted this regulation for Yavna Oni, and they said to him, Yavna and any other place where there is a bested. Okay. There we go. Ma'aser Sheni. Base. If one changes Ma'aser Sheni coins for a seller, Beis Shammai says the coins for a wholesaler. Beis Hillel says 1 shekel silver and 1 shekel coins. Reb Meir says one may not redeem silver and produce with silver, but the Chachamim permitted it. Here we are. If one changes the seller of Ma'aser Sheni in Jerusalem, Beis Shammai says coins for the wholesaler, but Beis Hillel says 1 shekel, 1 shekel silver and 1 shekel coins. The
Those who deliberate before the Chachamim, yes.
deliberate before the Chachamim say, for the din is silver and for 1 dinar copper coins. Rabbi Akiva says for the din is silver and 1/4 copper coins. Reb Tarfon says for aspers and silver. Shammai says let him leave it in a shop and eat its equivalent. And Good says if some of one's sons were unclean and some clean, he lays down the cellar and says, let this cellar be in exchange for what the clean drink, and thus the clean and the unclean may drink from 1 jar.
Okay.
The Gayam. Daled base. There were stringencies that apply to living skin, which do not apply to expansion. And there are stringencies that apply to expansion, which do not apply to living skin. Living skin renders tamei initially and renders tamei with any appearances. These are stringencies that apply to expansion. Expansion renders tamei with any amount, renders all nagayim tamei, and renders tamei outside the nega, which is not the case with living skin. There are stringencies that apply to white hair, which do not apply to living skin, and there are stringencies that apply to living skin, which do not apply to white hair. White hair renders a monega, and a burned nega tamei renders tamei, whether together or spread apart, whether surrounded or not. There are stringencies that apply to living skin. Living skin renders tamei on a bald area or either the back or front of the head. Whether changed by the nega or not, it prevents one who turns completely white from becoming tahor and renders tamei with any appearance, which is not the case with white hair. The 2 hairs that are turning black at the root and white at the top are tahor. That is, they are not symptoms of tumah. If they are turning white at the root and black at the top, they are tamei. How much of the hair must be white? Reb Meir says any amount. Reb Shimon says long enough to be cut with a pair of scissors. And if it is 1 hair that splits so that it appears to be 2 hairs, it is tahor. A snow white nega that has white hair or black hair is tamei, but we are not concerned that the black hair reduces the size of the baharis until it is too small to become tamei, because the hair does not have any substantive thickness. And Avos. Reb Elazar says, be diligent in the study of Torah and know what to answer a heretic. Know by whom you toil and know that your employer can be relied upon to pay you the wage of your labor. Reb Tarfon says the day is short, the task is abundant, the laborers are lazy, and the reward is great, and the master of the house is insistent. He used to say you're not required to complete the task if you're not free to withdraw from it. If you have studied much Torah, they give you great reward, and your employer can be relied upon to pay you the wage of your labor. But be aware that the award of the righteous will be given in the world to come.
Okay. And that is us for today.
Okay. What did we say we were starting tomorrow?